Hi, everybody. I usually take a little time sometimes at the end of a season to kind of collect my thoughts and so I don't overreact to something right after the end of a season. But I just wanted to share a brief podcast with you today to kind of summarize the Cavaliers season in my mind, anyway. Boy, look at the Indians. The Indians are just pasting the ball. So Eric Gonzalez just hit a solo home run as I started this thing. Boy, I didn't think I'd live to see the day that Eric Gonzalez, who's striking out every three times at the plate, would hit a home run. But like the Indians, 12 runs in one game, one run the next. Cavaliers brought their demise upon themselves. You can't lose game three the way they lost game three and expect everything to turn out okay. The real question to me and what's being discussed now, and I'm going over this and mulling this, and I've talked to a number of people online about it, is what the Cavaliers should do or shouldn't do as opposed to next year. If you would have talked to me after the two first games, I would have said to you, look, we're not even close. But, you know, the last three games were much more competitive basketball games. And I don't feel that the Cavaliers were ready to play the series from the first two games. I think the Warriors were. They were the hungrier team as well as the better team. And I don't understand why a defending champion wouldn't have more hunger than that. But we wondered that openly during the course of the entire season, why this team didn't appear to be hungry enough. And that is the reason why I'm curious what the Cavaliers are going to do in the off season, because it isn't an easy decision. I mean, you've got the specter of LeBron James on all the news media once again saying he's going to leave Cleveland again, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, I don't believe that LeBron James is going anywhere, but I think that the Cavaliers are going to have to retool in some kind of way. How, you know, the Kevin Love thing is being talked about as a tradable asset, and Paul George's name invariably gets mentioned. Jimmy Butler's name gets mentioned because of defensive prowess and some ability to score as well. I would not trade Kevin Love for Jimmy Butler. You know, looking at the Paul George thing, everything you do will have a price that you have to pay. And I understand what many of the Cavaliers fans are saying. Kevin Love is a great teammate, for one thing. He worked hard. He did what was asked of him. He sacrificed entire portions of his game so that he could fit in with this organization. And he helped us win a championship. And getting rid of him to bring in a Paul George changes the complexion of the team. You lose a four who's a stretch four who rebounds and passes well, and you replace him, in essence, with a three when we already have a three. And somebody who doesn't play as physical a game as far as rebounding the ball. And we saw some of the problems we had rebounding the ball when we went smaller this season. A lot of rebounding is want to, is effort. I do believe what other people believe. I say Ben from RealCavsFans.com. I believe Tristan Thompson is hurt too. I think that there's a reason why his energy wasn't there and why he was getting moved out more easily. I think that the end of his season had a lot of injury problems, and I think that there's a reason that his activity wasn't as great down low. But overall, the question you ask about the Cavaliers regarding Paul George is, how much do you want to reinvent the wheel? The problem in the NBA today is that the game is changing, and that having players who can play multiple positions is a very good thing, because you can substitute players into different roles and they will be a matchup terror for the team that they're playing against. The complaint about Paul George is that he openly said he would not play the power forward position when he was in Indiana, even though Larry Bird wanted him to. He did not want to do it. And LeBron has said repeatedly, publicly, that he doesn't want to play the 4, at least not at this time of his career. And I got to tell you, honestly, from the way he played this year, he's not ready to be put to the Michael Jordan power 4 pasture quite yet. However, I look at things by asking more questions too. And I say, well, what position does Draymond Green play? Or what position does Kevin Durant play? What position does Sean Livingston play? Or what position defensively does Klay Thompson play? Klay Thompson, in a lot of cases, was guarding Kyrie Irving in the beginning of the series. They have a lot of people who have the ability, although they have a 1, but Kevin Durant can play the 2, the 3, the 4, or even a 5 in a small lineup because of his length. And that was what really helped them become the championship team, is that Durant sacrificed himself to play more positions. Draymond Green can play a 2 in a real physical defensive lineup, can play a 3 or a 4. The question is not, to me, what Paul George or LeBron James want to do. They should want to win a championship, and whatever is necessary should be done to win a championship. With that said, LeBron James plays a 1, he plays a 3, he plays a 4, and for a few minutes, maybe even a 5 in a very small lineup. LeBron has done what's asked of him. Paul George would have to if he came to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, it would change the Cavaliers because it would make them a better up and down team, because honestly, Kevin Love didn't run the floor particularly well in this series, and I think was exploited on many quick turnaround baskets up the floor. However, you can't really compare Paul George and Kevin Love. They're very different kinds of players. If you bring in a guy like Paul George, it's going to mean more growing pains, and the clock is ticking on LeBron James' career. So you have that. If you keep Kevin Love, then you're still the favorites to win the East, but what do you do to improve your chances against the Golden State Warriors? And that's really where my head's at right now, because I really don't think a deal can be done, because it's not going to be just K-Love straight up for Paul George. It's going to be more than that, and the Cavaliers honestly don't have the assets to trade. The question is, what do you do to catch up? How do you make up the difference between the Warriors and the Cavs? The only thing I can tell you is that the bench has to get stronger, and you've got to have somebody who does a better job than Deron Williams did. You've got to have people who have fresher legs than Richard Jefferson. And look, Jefferson, did as much as he could do against Kevin Durant. It's a thankless job having to cover somebody like that at 36 years of age. Everybody knows that Kyle Korver missed a lot of threes in this series, although I don't think that he's going anywhere. I do think that Champ has to move on. I think that Richard Jefferson needs to retire. Just like Andre Iguodala will eventually retire, when you reach a certain age, it's inevitable that you just go a different way. And I think RJ has a future in broadcasting, and I think that he should move on to that. Obviously, the Cavaliers bench didn't have an established big guy to come in off the bench, even to commit hard fouls. And so any trading that the Cavaliers do, you can say, well, we can get Paul George and trade him for Kevin Love if that were possible. But it still leaves you without a number of things, one being a backup big. Here's another problem. I used to think that J.R. Smith and Shumpert were two different players. In essence, their role was supposed to be kind of replicated, with JR playing defense with the first string and Shumpert being the defensive stalwart and second string. But I got to be honest with you on this. J.R. Smith provided no offense in the first 3 games of the series, and was a no-show and refusing to shoot the ball, refusing to take the ball to the rim. And when he actually did take the ball to the rim, it left him more opportunities outside, and he started scoring, but by then it was too late. J.R. Smith tried to play defense, do the best he could, But J.R. Smith is a guy that you need to get points from when you're playing a point-laden team like the Golden State Warriors. Shumpert, on the other hand, is just the opposite. Shumpert is a defensive guy who, for some reason, believes he's an offensive player, who believes that he can whirl and deal and go to the basket and Earl the Pearlet and Uncle Drew it and throw up threes. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If I wanted three-point shooting, I'd have gotten that from J.R. Smith. I want Shumpert to play defense. His defense took a step backward this year, and he was shooting too many shots that were not shots that he would make. So we were getting the worst of both worlds from those two players, and they're not getting any younger, especially J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith let the team down by passing up offensive opportunities, and it's not because he can't shoot the ball. It's almost like he internalized the fact that he wasn't supposed to, and who knows on what plane this guy's brain works on. But you're going to have to get more out of your bench, out of J.R. Smith and Shumpert. And I think those players need to be replaced. I think you've got to move them. And, I understand J.R. Smith's value. Maybe you could salvage him, but Shumpert, for the money he's being paid, just isn't getting the job done. So you need help on the bench, but you need a backup point guard, which we don't have. And Darren Williams went back to being slow, sluggish, and ineffectual in these playoffs and was really shown up by the speed of the Warriors. That doesn't help you at all. And we didn't see any of Derek Williams, even though people thought he would be more athletic, but we didn't see any of that. And instead, we got the Old Man River lineup. And you can't win against Golden State by fielding a second unit that has Darren Williams and Kyle Korver and Richard Jefferson on the floor at the same time. It's just not going to work. So how do you end up with assets to be able to get new, fresh, younger, more athletic and dynamic players? I don't know. And that's why I'm confused, because beyond the Kevin Love discussion, the Cavaliers, the reason that they lost to the Golden State Warriors is that the same thing that held true before holds true today. When LeBron goes to the bench, we cannot hold leads. We have a huge minus when LeBron's off the floor. And I think a lot of that is because we don't have a good backup point guard. I think that, when LeBron's off the floor, Kyrie has to be Allen Iverson. He has to be a guy who thinks score the ball first because LeBron is on the bench. So there's no distribution. There's nothing but one-on-one. And we have a bunch of old guys on the floor with Kyrie, and Kyrie internalizes it and says he has to do everything himself. Not a good situation. So, the Kevin Love thing, I understand both sides of the argument, but there's a bigger picture here, and the Cavaliers have to get deeper in a way that challenges the athletic capabilities of Golden State. Now, with that said, since the championship changed hands, the owner of the Warriors said he's going to do whatever he could to keep the players together. That's going to mean 5 years, $205 million to Steph Curry. And Steph Curry was by no means the best player on the court for them. Durant has said that he will take less than the max to stay there, which makes sense. This will be his 11th year, and he ain't going anywhere. But they're going to wind up like everyone winds up eventually. They're just getting a slightly younger start at it. They're going to have so much payroll luxury tax, it's going to be like Dan Gilbert. And at that point, when you start losing some pieces or you end up with injuries or whatever might happen, you have a limited thing that you can do. And I know that Griff was given a lot of credit for the roster he put together. And given the circumstances of how deeply the Cavaliers were into luxury tax, it's not an easy thing to be able to come up with the bodies, let alone capable bodies, to fill a roster. Right now, I guess after thinking about it, I keep Kevin Love. I keep the core of my team together. And somehow I try to communicate to these players the importance of playing 48 minutes. And I don't mean during the regular season. I mean during the playoffs, and being more consistent and having more mental focus. I think the Cavaliers' best chance, if they can make it to the finals next year and stay relatively healthy doing it, is to hope that Golden State does not remain healthy, because the more money they have to spend, the less options there will be for them to get players. I mean, JaVale McGee didn't make a big difference in these playoffs, and you take a look at some of their further down the bench guys, they really didn't make that much of an impact either. They needed Kevin Durant on the floor to get their runs. They need Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And Klay Thompson, he had a tough year. I think he's going to be better next year because he's going to be acclimated to the fact that he just can't chuck up shots like he did when it was just he and Steph. But health has a lot to do with this. And, you only have X number of years for the Cavaliers to get this done, and it's a very narrow window. I think the smartest thing the Cavaliers can do is kind of stick with their core, see if they can get rid of some of the older players, buy them out, and see if we can get some younger talent that has some defensive qualifications on the floor and athleticism, and coach them up. Because I don't think there's any other solution for the Cavaliers. Like I said, I think Korver will stay, but I think that Jefferson had to be lured back, and I think he signed a 2-year deal. But honestly, Champ can't remain around, even if he's, LeBron's guy pal. You can't justify people who never get unrooted off the bench. So that's that. Draymond Green finally said something good. The Warriors have turned down the chance of going to the White House. Draymond Green's quote, "If I'd wanted to see a clown, I'd go to the circus." Well, I mean, 1 out of 5,000 things might be funny that he says, but I think the guy is a dick. And I think that, he's the one guy in Golden State I don't like. I like Steve Kerr. I think Steph's a little full of himself. I got nothing against Klay Thompson, and I've got nothing against Kevin Durant either. And I'm actually happy that Durant finally won a championship, even though, it was pretty well assured that that's what would happen. I'm glad that he personally rose to the challenge, because everybody has got to get the monkey off their back at some point in time. I'm watching the Indians out of the corner of my eye. They're winning 12-5 in the bottom of the 8th inning. The Indians have been absolutely terrible. It's sad that the basketball season's over, and I have to focus on the Indians, which I'm not going to do today, because honestly, I'm flabbergasted about how bad they've been. And then there's the Cleveland Browns, that I have to sit here and read people and fans' comments that they want Brock Osweiler. And so if you want Brock Osweiler, go ahead, bring him over to your house, let him fuck your wife, whatever the hell it is you want. I don't want Brock Osweiler as my quarterback, because he's not a caliber quarterback. We don't have a caliber quarterback. But if you have Larry, Curly, and Mo, okay, which one do you start at quarterback? Honestly. Curly is kind of, but he's big and he's strong, okay? Larry is a guy who's kind of ineffectual. And Mo is the leader, even though he's not the greatest leader of all time. So you start Mo, and Cody Kessler is Mo. He is the smartest of the bunch. That doesn't mean he's a great quarterback, but he's the smarter of the three. You start the smart one. Larry is Osweiler. He's ineffectual. And Deshaun Kaiser is Curly. Champagne. He's big and he's strong, but he's got no experience. I don't want to go through an entire summer of having to wheedle our way down as to why Brock Osweiler is really the starting quarterback for the Browns. And so help me God, if that's how the season starts, I'm done. I'm not even going to bother wasting my fucking time. Why? I mean, how many guys who... how many Derek Andersons do we need? How many before we learn the lesson? The guys who don't see the field and throw interceptions will always not see the field and throw interceptions. And I don't want to argue about how many games he won, what percentage wins he had. He played for better football teams. Look, he played for a team like Tim Tebow did, and Tim Tebow won with the Broncos. And he sucked. He barely won. It was like Doug Flutie with that great Bears defense, barely won. 9-7 games. That's the Tim Tebow thing, right? Brock Osweiler throwing more interceptions than touchdowns. Yeah, but he won. And it's like, no, as soon as he left, that's when teams really start winning. Because if you have a good offensive line in front of somebody, even a lousy quarterback can look better. I mean, look at Matt Castle. I mean, I'm so tired of having to explain this to idiot fans. It's like Matt Castle, you put him in the Patriots. He's good. He's got a good front line, a good system. You send him over to Kansas City and, and he's gone. He's out of football. Nobody wants him because he really blew all along. That's Brock Osweiler. He blows, okay? And you're putting him in with an offensive line that hasn't gelled. The Browns' offensive line is vastly more talented this year than it was last year, but they've never played together before, okay? And it's going to be a little bit tough sledding on stunts initially during the course of the season. I don't want a 6'7" idiot who throws picks and who's slow back there, okay? I want a guy with the quicker release who'll make the quicker throw, please. That's basically what I have to say today, but I'll have more to say some other day. So keep it tuned. I mean, right now, what is it today? Friday or Thursday? Today's Thursday, right? I'll be back with something tomorrow or Saturday, and I'll have more to say. Thanks a lot for tuning into the podcast. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.